All right, so after watching Spider-Noir Episodes 2 through 4, I think we have to ask the real question. Are we still loving this show? Or is the shine starting to come off the web? Because Episode 1 gave us the vibe. Nicolas Cage, black and white noir, hardboiled detective energy, Marvel weirdness, all of that worked. But now that we're deeper into the season, the question becomes, does Spider Noir have a strong enough story to match the style? We're talking Ben Riley, Cat Hardy, Robbie Robertson, Silvermane, Tombstone, and whether this show is building real momentum or just giving us a really cool looking mystery box. Let's get into it.
Greetings, nerds. This is Cena Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Paul. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good.
That's good.
You know, it's June.
It is June. Happy June. Happy Pride Month. Happy summer. Happy everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, snow is finally
awesome.
melted everywhere.
Hey,
and I have
great.
green grass. I have some green grass. I've done yard work in preparation. And I was pretty angry last Wednesday when I was doing yard work and I saw my first bee. And I was like, damn it. My serenity has ended because I can't do bees. I can't do flying things because they're hard to kill. Okay, a spider is easy to kill.
Hey, spider! Hey, don't be like this. Don't be like the swatting of the spider there in the episode 2.
Well, it is, and I didn't even know I was gonna go there. I didn't even make that connection.
When you did, I was just like, as soon as I was like, I just thought of that image. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So we are here. It is June, and we're talking Spider-Noir Season 1, Episode 2. Tread lightly. You're an investigator. Investigate. Will, do you think that given what happens in Episode 2, does the show work beyond the pilot?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think not only this episode, but all 3 episodes, to me, just intrigue definitely is like ratcheted up for me this week. Now that we definitely have that, I feel like in many ways the show feels a bit more grounded, and I'll expand on that thoughts as we discuss the 3 episodes that we're talking tonight, and then also we're seeing Ben become more of a PI. So episode 1 set the table, and then 2 now really starting to dig into more of the mystery and the beats as far as how all these characters like interconnect. So yeah, I feel like I think things are starting to advance with this second episode.
Did anything really stick out to you about the second episode?
Yeah, so one thing that did stick out to me, and it really was with Robbie and whenever he went to go see Vera, and one of the things as far as what I was talking about groundedness of these episodes, again, as we know, it is in the 1930s, and then whenever he went to go see Vera, and it was this, and also one other thing, but one of the elements is whenever they were talking about Addison, and she starts to she was like scream about black man coming into her apartment there at the hotel. There was that, and then also the whites only. I mean, it just really, even though this is in a comic book world and all, it definitely did. What I appreciated about it was it did not ignore the fact that this show is set in the 30s and there is a segregated America, and I just really appreciated that plot, that point. And then also whenever they were in the hall, and she's like, I'll scream, and thinking about like Jim Crow, and and some of the terrible things that happen when with during that time period with situations. And then how Robbie like countered it as far as like, you could do that, but you may saw compound one problem for another. I
Mhm.
really appreciated how they showed that in this episode. I mean, I know there's other things that were going in there, but that was definitely one point when I was watching it that really did stick out to me, because in so many times when you do these genre pieces, they may ignore that piece. But I liked how the showrunners baked real history into their show.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's those are good catches, because they don't draw too much attention to it either.
Right, right.
Um,
But yeah, but it was there. Yeah, it's just like whites only. I mean, it was just, whenever Robbie talked to the bellhop there, he was like, yeah, here's how you get it. Here's how you can get into this, into this hotel and stuff. So it was cool things like that.
and you said like that was one of two things that made it feel more grounded. What was the other thing?
Oh, I was also just along those same lines. Whenever Ben and Robbie and Janet were talking about the photo that Ben finds in Flint's apartment, and
Uh-huh.
showing that they were of course they were you captured in the First World War in Germany,
Right.
and then and we referenced Ben's service, but then Ben also noted that the units were segregated at that time, and so for all these, and that Janet then figured out, well, these, and they all figured out that this must mean that they were POWs, and of
Mhm.
course
Yeah, yeah.
does lead to some of the other things as far as like, well, the experimentation and that kind of stuff for why these three individuals that we've been introduced to have powers.
Yeah, yeah, and the rogues gallery that we're
Yeah,
familiar with, all too
yeah,
familiar with
yeah.
Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, we get introduced to Lonnie
Mhm.
Lincoln, aka Tombstone.
Yep.
Um, so and I think that's really what stood out, not just about this episode, because I think out of these 3 episodes, the second episode's the weakest for me.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
But in terms of jumping off points, in terms of my perception about the show so far, I can appreciate how they are interweaving the Spider-Man mythos
Hmm.
into this show without drawing too much attention to it.
Yeah.
It's like there are Easter eggs, but
Hmm.
not the Easter eggs. They are not executed the way that in the past Marvel specifically has executed Easter eggs, given like there's no wink to the camera.
Yeah.
It just it's and they go about it in a way where you have to look it up. You have to be like, okay,
Yeah.
so who really is this person? I mean, last week I was like, so who is Kat Hardy, just so I understand. And you reminded me that she was Black Cat at one point, so you start to put the pieces together a bit more. And I can appreciate that. I do think that it's just so of this genre to have these individuals who are superpower be part of the war, because we've seen
Mhm.
that a lot over the past,
Yeah.
like it's just innate that
Yeah.
those world wars, whether it's 2 or 1, um they to ground the origin story, they start them off as soldiers and then they
Mhm.
become, they get captured and experimented on. So I was like, okay, we've seen that a
Yeah.
bit before, but at the same time, I think it's clever to use that specifically for the Rogues Gallery, because unlike X-Men,
Mhm.
which is an ensemble crew,
Yeah.
Spider-Man has the exact opposite issue. It's just Spidey. And
Yeah.
with the number of rogues, and the only other, arguably the only other hero I equate it to is Batman with his rogues
Mhm.
gallery.
Mhm.
It gets to the point where sometimes the villains are more popular and known than even the hero. I mean, Joker and
Yeah.
Batman, but that's DC. So I can appreciate how it's being used as a device to populate New York with these other superpower people. Now, question for you, because I might have
Yeah.
missed this.
Yeah.
Um, did we did Ben at any point say that he served in the war?
Janet brought it up.
So he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. He served in the
Yeah.
war.
But yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah,
don't know if during his service that's when he got bitten by a spider.
right. Right. They haven't answered that question yet as far as
Mhm.
how he got his powers, but
Right.
he did serve, and he also, because even there was a line in this episode, or maybe it was the third episode, but he even noted like when he discovered the photograph in Flint's apartment, and then he notes how there were just many soldiers in the area, and that's also whenever he also noted that the units were segregated, and so that's how he put it together that that's how they all put it together that Lonnie, Addison, and Flint were POWs together at that camp,
Mhm.
in that photograph when they were liberated.
Yeah, yeah. They're using the search for Addison, which Addison kind of
Mm-hmm.
kicks off all of this chain of events, and they're intertwining it now with a search for Flint as Janet has paid Riley to investigate Flint's disappearance. And
Yep.
then and and so it's also good that they're having arguably these very parallel investigations
Mm-hmm.
that are we know are interconnected.
Yep.
But it gives like Robbie in particular reason to be around.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And to be utilized. Like he can go off and investigate over here, and then Ben can go this way and have his whole back and forth with Janet. And then
Mm-hmm.
Silvermane is just always lurking, which by the end of this episode, Ben steps in it a little bit as he prevents. So make sure I get this right. So
Yeah.
we learn at the end of this episode that someone tipped off the cops about a Silvermane booze exchange because, again,
Yep.
30s, so prohibition. But
Mm-hmm.
someone stopped him from coming.
Right.
So, and it was Ben who stopped Silvermane from coming because of
Yep.
their interaction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so i.e., there is a rat in the crew.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody knew who it was.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I wonder who the guy is. I wonder who it is, but
Guy or
yeah,
girl? Guy or
or
girl?
girl. Guy or girl, because again, yeah, I loved how they like really structured like you were saying, all these with the second episode, we do have Kat hiring Ben to find Flint. At the same time, we're having Winston and Silvermane up there on the rooftop, and I watched. I have to say, this digress for like 30 seconds. I watched both of these in color and black and white. I have to say that I'm like tied now as far as which version I like better, because they both work for different reasons. But getting back to Winston and Silvermane on the rooftop, Winston is like sharing all these stories about the Canadians, with the drop, and Silvermane's like the whole issue of tread lightly as far as thinking you can take me out, even though this, and they also just note how, how the city has gotten more maybe complacent because the spider's been gone for 5 years. And so, so there's that story that was going on there. And then of course, when, of course, Ben going to the apartment and, finding the photo, and of course Winston, going in there and, right, they were tailing him and like right behind, not tailing him at that point, but they also go to the apartment too, and and of course, we have the hiding in the closet, But the funny thing about it, even though that was a very like predictable thing to happen, it still like worked for the universe that we're in and the show that we're in. And then it just, again, showing how Ben has to use this, again, saying it without saying it. He has the organic web spinners. He doesn't, he's not like Peter, where at least one, the earlier versions of Peter, before the Sam Raimi of it all, with the organic spinners and the movies in the early 2000s. But having the organic spinners and using that to like keep Winston from like finding him there in the closet. So things like that, where those were like little fun little beat moments that I enjoyed about the second episode.
Yeah, I didn't like the closet scene, not because like him being in there or anything. I just was like, Winston, really, it's obviously locked or something, and you're not going to try a bit harder. I thought he gave up. I thought he gave up way too simple. That's just my nitpick.
Yeah. I thought, but also I think too. But the thing is, if he like had forced it, then they would have given it away that someone had been in there. So
I don't think they really care. They shouldn't. I mean, they're mobsters.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That leads us into episode 3.
Before we leave there though, there was one thing too, as far as just Ben suiting back up, and one of the things I liked about him, I was surprised that they had him suit up so early in the series. I was thinking that we would get a little bit later. I mean, I know we've seen him like utilize his powers and stuff, but for him to suit up and to be able to stop the raid, and then the precipitating event was just was after they roughed up Janet and stuff there in the office. It really showed the dimensions as far as like putting people in peril, got him back in the game.
Yep.
So, hey y'all, it's Will. Real big favor to ask: if you're liking what we're doing here, please hit the like button, drop us a comment, and also subscribe. We're growing this channel, and we appreciate each and every one of you. So with that, thank you so much. Let's get back to the discussion.
So now that brings us to episode 3, Double Cross. The quicker you prove it, the quicker they die. So here, the mystery and the character work, does it get stronger, Will?
Definitely. I think here's where I was referencing earlier, seeing Ben do the detective work, like whenever we, going around talking to the various policemen in the hospital, and having them tip each other's, get one piece of the story from one person, then builds on it to get it from another person, and then continuing on, especially as they try to figure out who was the one who tipped off what happened there at the with the raid. And so to me, that was definitely a place where the things that definitely did get a little bit started to get deeper.
Yeah, I think it was. So I watched episode 3 and 4 in black and white.
Okay.
I took your recommendation, and I agree with you that I think the episodes should be watched in black and white, because you were right. The lighting is definitely strong enough, so it's not like you can't see things, and the use of shadows.
Yeah.
Really, it's I mean, that's film noir. So
Yeah.
it it really allowed me to actually view it from that perspective. I don't know if that was a good thing though, because then my mind started to question, okay, so why are you using that angle here? And I don't know if they
Mm,
just got a little bit crazy with the editing because it felt like we were jumping around for no good reason.
mm,
Sometimes I like editing for purpose, especially
yeah.
with film noir. I mean, Um,
Yeah.
there was a
Yeah.
scene in particular that stood out. So the more I thought about it, it was more as like, okay, I get it. I mean, this is the gimmick of the show. It's noir, it's spider noir. So that's why we're doing it. The but they do create beautiful images in black and white. I mean, there I kind of wanted I kind of like, I think it's in episode 2 after he comes back to the office as the
Mm,
spider. They chose this off
yeah.
offset angle, and they chose it because he's in costume returning to the office of a PI, but
Hmm.
as a spider. And so it felt very crawly, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. The crawly's not a word, but it felt like
Yeah.
we as a viewer were crawling into the office. So I appreciated that. I also appreciate in the or not the third episode, but in the fourth episode when Kat Hardy jumps out the window, the
Hmm.
fall, the watching that in black and white was beautiful.
It
Very
was.
beautiful. Um
Yeah.
they so I do, like I said before, I do agree that it should be in black and white. Now, the other thing, and this is why I really went on this tangent, is because you brought up the whole sequence of him interviewing people.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was during this sequence where I got somewhat of the ick. Okay. I love Nicolas Cage. I do. I
Yeah.
do. And I loved hearing his voice in the Cross the Spider-Verse movies.
Yeah.
However,
Hmm.
it was during this sequence where I was suddenly like, is he just doing an impersonation of Jimmy Stewart?
Yeah.
Because ever and then as soon as I heard it, throughout the rest of the episodes, I was like, "Oh god, this annoys me to no end," because it just feels like an impersonation. And then again, or is my brain messing with me? Because I'm like, because I equate, because I was also like, or is
Yeah.
that more Gregory Peck? I don't know. I think it's
Yeah.
Jimmy Stewart though. I mean,
I was thinking like Cagney.
what?
Hey, Cagney, as far as another film noir.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess
Because
I go Stewart. I've seen way too many of Stewart's movies.
yeah.
So
Yeah. But yeah, I hear what you're saying though, because I had that same, especially like when Winston and Ben were talking there in the bar, and part of it was the vernacular, trying to using some of the vernacular at the time, but you're right. I mean, it was Nicolas Cage leaning into like leaning into what we know about Nicolas Cage as far as an actor, and really playing up that play, playing into his strengths of like taking it to the edge, like you said, with the intonation, but uh never, for me at least, I don't think he ever went to like parody, but he came dangerously close to it.
yeah, I mean it went beyond just that sequence for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh, there are a couple
that,
other ones too. Yeah.
that's
Oh yeah.
where
Yeah.
that's where I was like, okay,
Yeah.
okay. It's just that
Yeah.
during that it was so fast that I
Hmm.
I was like, wait a second. And then as the episode continued, I was like, oh great, I have the ick. I can't unhear us. Um, what else stood out to you about this episode
Yeah.
3?
Yeah. So the other thing I really enjoyed with episode 3, I think it was where they started picking up the thing about the marked bills.
Yeah, because that's how he
Yeah,
manages to get
yeah,
to save
yeah,
Kat and
yeah,
get Winston killed.
yeah, yeah. So it was that, and then of course, again breaking into Silvermane's apartment that night, and I loved seeing how he used the spider powers to, like, to hear the tumblers with the safe in there, and also I think last week we were just discussing as far as the Spidey sense, as far as like was it broken or not, and it seems in these episodes the Spidey sense is definitely more attuned, because things that were happening, he was able to anticipate. So maybe getting back in the game, things seem to be working better for him,
Yeah,
in these episodes.
I think it's more he's more attuned. I think the
Yeah.
Spidey sense has always been there,
Hmm.
but ever since the chain of events, especially knowing he kind of screwed up at
Yeah.
the end of the last episode, his responsibility,
Hmm.
you got to use that word when you're talking about
gotta
Spider-Man,
gotta use it. Yeah.
leads him to be more attuned to that sense and to all of
Hmm.
these connections. And I mean, that's where you see the detective come out and start to put the pieces together. I mean,
Yeah.
I can appreciate that they're not making Ben dumb.
Yeah.
He is very smart.
Yeah.
And arguably none of the characters are dumb.
No.
Not even with Winston to an extent. He's just an
Yeah.
asshole. There's a difference.
Yeah. There's a
And
difference.
and
Yeah.
so I can appreciate that so far we have no dumb characters. Now, will that
Hmm.
stand for the second half? I don't know. So time will tell, because you always know they tend to sneak their way in there and then you're like, what
Yeah.
the heck? But
Yeah.
but yeah, the bills and just the cat and mouse game of it all was an
Yeah.
interesting thing to present in terms of Winston chasing Ben and
Mhm.
Ben trying to save Kat
Yeah.
while at the same time trying to like get them out of this situation because she's clearly the rat.
Yeah.
And then finding himself working for Silvermane. I mean,
Yeah.
that was another good wrinkle, is where suddenly my enemy, who I know won't hurt me because
Hmm.
of the threat from the spider that he delivered, but
Yeah.
simultaneously, like, he doesn't want to be working for him either. So,
Right.
and I think it's also goes back to the whole 30s recession and like
Hmm.
marking of the bills. There's a lot of lines in this episode about following money, not people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and there's also a lot about the class divide, because
Yeah.
there's a line, money and power, not a lot of that going around these days, but here you are in your ivory tower, and that's Ben to Silvermane.
Hmm.
So and then you have Winston's arguably his last line, which was, "What did I tell you? You can't dress up a stray dog. It will still bite you, and it will still bite you." And that's in reference to Cat. Now, I just want to put one thing out there. We
Yeah.
don't have to delve into this, okay? I just want to say, I would have thought it would have been more interesting if they had a different relation dynamic occur between Kat and Winston, because there was a look in, I want to say, the second episode when she's
Yeah.
trying on dresses for Silvermane,
Yeah.
and his reaction made me think there was some sympathy, and that just went right out the window in episode 3. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like they
Yeah.
took the easy way out there.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking when I was watching that scene, whenever she was, you know, basically like, he treated her like a doll. It read to me like sympathy, but also was, but also,
Like, I thought at one point they
Yeah.
were together and she left him for Flint.
Hmm.
Like, I
Yeah.
created and with that one look, I created a whole nother story arc going on. I mean, there
Yeah.
there was you knew that there was definitely tension.
There was tension.
And
Yeah.
yeah, you just couldn't figure out what. And I don't really think we ever got a good reason
Yeah.
for those two to not like each other.
Yeah, that was going to be what I was going to say. You read it as sympathy. Also, I read it. What the word I was looking for was disgust.
Hmm.
Whenever he was looking at her, whenever she was trying on those things, but it was disgust, but also, yeah, but there was also some maybe a little bit of lust there as well. Just because whenever Kat just turned around and was walking, it definitely like played into the film noir tropes with the femme fatale and the hypersexuality of the scene and all also. So yeah, so there was a lot of things going on in that moment for sure.
Yeah, it's just a very thin line between love and hate.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, the
Other,
the
yeah,
other big thing that happens in this episode is Robbie witnessing the Harlem police raid
mhm,
and
yeah,
finding not only Flint but also Lonnie, and they use their powers to fight off the police. Any
yeah.
thoughts about that whole sequence and Robbie's investigation that occurs throughout this episode?
Yeah, so you brought up about the class of and the depression and so again bringing all that up in this episode, and then and also just you know Robbie trying to get his job back at the Bugle, and now that these people are back, clearly we have Spider who is reemerged, we have these people with powers, and Robbie is trying to get his. He's like, I remember him like talking to the editor's assistant, trying, like, look, I have a story here. Just give me a chance. And then, of course, he gets all those photos. And to your point about the cinematography and stuff, they did this was another scene where I think they definitely took advantage of angles and um, just great composition of scenes when Robbie was taking those pictures of the fight going down. But also, again, just getting into the class of it all, and just how the police were treating people during this time period. So again, this show, like I was saying with some of the showing the segregation of things of the time period, is also again showing and not necessarily telling, but just by utilizing utilizing a story, they are sharing many things that we get as a viewer without it being like you know overly preachy or anything like that. But it just again just sort of sets the tone. And again, I agree with you. This is where the black and white really does accentuate those elements.
Yeah, I that sequence I wasn't really impressed by the angles so much as the way it was edited felt
Mhm.
like with every flash of the camera, it almost was like there was a pause. And so
Mhm.
it felt like a flip book of images,
Yeah,
very, very comic booky, but in black and
yeah,
white. I don't know. There were, and given that Robbie's the journalist, which
mhm.
again, journalism and investigation is a very prime thing in terms of Spider-Man
Yeah,
mythos.
yeah,
So we have Ben as the investigator, but Robbie also investigates, and you still have the pictures
yeah,
and the proof of it all of this actually occurring. So
yeah,
I I
yeah,
I appreciate that.
yeah.
Um,
And then Oh yeah, and to that point about the proof of the telling the story, and then of course the story getting twisted by the editor, that the focus is on the Flint and Sandman and Tombstone, and the whole
Mhm.
police brutality of it all was just completely washed away. Because and whenever, because I knew that the editor was going to do something with Robbie's story. He wasn't just going to tell the story that Robbie wanted to tell, but I did, but and I guess that was where I was going earlier. Um, you know, them really not telling the truth there. It was just more the sensational aspect of like, oh, we've got these monsters back with powers, and the whole police brutality, and of course, we have that backdrop of all of this with the re-election of the mayor, and learning his how he's
We'll get
trying
there.
to yeah yeah yeah
Yeah, because I just want to chime in on this because I think the more interesting thing about that whole exchange is it's a reminder we still don't know why Robbie lost his job to begin with. We know at
exactly.
one point he was investigating the spider and he was that point person.
Mm-hmm.
But then the spider went away. And so
Right.
suddenly you start to put together some of the pieces of likely Robbie's job was all dependent on that because and
Yeah.
so there's a bittersweet of sense of irony here, given
Yeah.
that he experienced this police brutality thing that just so happened to include people with these unnatural abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and he presented that story, yet the editor took it, sensationalized it, which is the very thing that I'm led to believe as a viewer he was known for doing with the spider. So who
Yeah.
knows what kind of so it's I wonder how long the where they'll go with the ethics of journalism with Robbie and that idea that yes, you do have these people who have
Yeah.
that, but that doesn't diminish the and this may the non-superhero stories that still occur in New York that are very worthy of being told.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that can get just missed because of the bigger headline is just this crazy thing. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but that leads us to episode 4, the midpoint of the season, a mistake I'll never make again. I don't know. I think he's still got it is the IMDb summary. And I'm sorry, y'all. I just realized I haven't been saying when I've said things that are the
It's
IMDb summary. But if you go back, I do it at the start. So put 1 and 2 together. um so I'm going to start with this one just because I have to get this off my chest.
Yeah,
And
go ahead.
I'm sure y'all know where I'm going to go with this because y'all know that I love me a ship. Do I
Mm-hmm.
ship Kat and Ben? No. And here's why. I think it was too fast. I think that it annoys me how we have these great moments, these really interesting moments with Kat and Flint in the previous episodes. And or even in this episode. And there's just this, you get the sense that they were going to be together. She did this for him. And
Mm-hmm.
yet he is sick. And so there is a lot to unpack there. So then to proceed to quote unquote unpack it and it just be like, yeah, that's just a fantasy. And then for Ben to get in the middle or seemingly in the middle, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. I didn't like the
Yeah.
kiss at the end. So because it just felt while I was sensing that turn was too quick, where I was like, wasn't it like 2 days ago you were still in love with Flint? It was also simultaneously the recognition of how much they messed with Flint as a character, because one minute he hates Silvermane. Maybe hate's a strong word, but he wants that life, and then the next thing I know, he witnesses a conversation, and he goes off, and suddenly he's Silvermane's right hand man again. So
Yeah.
it like, it just annoys me, and I get it. We have 8 episodes.
Yeah.
But then I feel like, well, why did we witness all those other scenes where we can see the humanity and the love between these two characters, only for like the very next episode for this all to happen? I'm like, I don't know about that. So I am not a Ben and Kat shipper, and like, that honestly took up a lot of my brain power while watching the 4th episode. So I was like, okay. But what are some of your thoughts about the 4th episode, Will?
Yeah. I was there with you because I'm glad you brought up the 3rd episode, the moment that Kat and Flint did have there in the apartment, and how he was, like you said, they were said they were just going to leave it all and just get away from it all, and then now that Ben and Kat have this conversation there at the stage, and for me, that was part of problematic for me there. Also, too, it was, we get more details about what happened with Ruby.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and that sequence. And so I know we're at the midpoint, but for him to, I don't know, I was almost like, I don't know if it was where I was feeling the shipping vibes. It was almost like he was getting into, it was that true protector mode as much as falling in love with her. Like, I mean, I guess he was falling in love with her too, but also it was like, oh, here's an opportunity to make things right with Kat where I messed up with Ruby, and when we get that backstory. So
Well,
I get,
no, because he denies that,
yeah,
Will. Because
I know he denies that. Yeah,
yeah, I don't think that. And I also don't think
that's the
that
point.
it's love. I think it's just lust.
Yeah,
And I say that also given that when we learn more about Kat in the theater, and which prompts us to learn more about Ruby, Kat tells us about a dentist. She doesn't tell us about Flint. She tells us about a dentist, and her and that guy, her falling in love with him. And so there's a pattern. I mean, she's the femme fatale. She doesn't fall in love. These people are used, and this again is what annoys me, because you totally got me with the Flint and Kat love affair, only to then suddenly I'm like, oh shit, she's a femme fatale. So all of these men are devices, are being used to get her out from under Silvermane.
Yeah.
So she thought Flint, she could get out with Flint. She thought she could get out with this dentist. Both of them have been removed now, and now she has Ben, who just protected her and saved her, and she's like, I wonder if he can manipulate these situations to get me out of here, because it's just an escape, and she knows her allure. She knows. And that's what a femme fatale does, is they like capture you in the web because of lust, and then they will sacrifice you to get what they want, which is mainly freedom.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I did not think about that, but now that you mention it, that is the motivation, especially. And then, as you brought it up earlier, but of course the way this episode ends, with her figuring out, putting 2 and 1 plus 1 together, as far as
Again, no
Ben.
dumb characters. No dumb
Yep, no
characters.
dumb characters at all. But now with your framing of it with these next 4 episodes, that will will she use that to her advantage over with respect to Silvermane or with Ben? Yeah, we'll just sort of see how how that all plays out over the next few episodes.
Oh yeah, I think it's definitely she's tying herself more to Ben given
Hmm.
what she knows now.
Yeah,
Um Now the Ben of it all, well, we'll see. He's in a bit clouded judgment is a polite way of
yeah,
putting it. So
yeah.
but I mean, just that one line of
Hmm.
her trying to say, what you're doing did for me was redemption for Ruby. And he's like, no, 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 that can never be
Yeah,
redeemed. So
yeah,
I kind of, and Ben is still very much a character who, to an extent, is underdeveloped.
yeah.
And rightfully so, because he's our
Hmm.
main character. So you got to
Yep.
have a bit more intrigue with him. So I don't think I will have a full assessment of who Ben Riley is as a man, as a person, as a hero until the end of the season.
Yeah, I agree.
Um so I and maybe not even then, because I mean it's only a season 1 and
Yeah,
there's a chance that it'll get picked up for a second season. But
yeah.
uh what else? There's a card game. We kind of already talked about this loosely, but this
Yeah.
episode, Robbie and Janet learn some more of the history with the POWs from
Hmm.
Lonnie regarding the Germans capturing them and doing this to them. And now they need to go and talk to Dr. Faber about it.
Yeah.
Uh, Riley also tips off Robbie, and Robbie gets a breaking story when the Spider fights Electro in the streets of New York. And this is like the big public um,
Yeah.
appearance of the Spider that there is. And I just love it. I love the line, no, no, we're not a team. No.
Nope. Nope. Nope.
When the mayor was trying to, I
Yeah.
thought that was like, okay, you got
Yeah.
me. There was that,
Yeah.
which also reminds me, some of the interactions between Robbie, not the Spider, but Robbie and Silvermane. There's a lot of suggestion about his wit.
Hmm.
And there's a line in particular, he says, oh, you've got a mouth on you, that'll get you
Yeah.
into trouble. And in that's really interesting, because we know the Spidey is very known for him being a
Yep. Yep.
nonstop yapper
Yep.
while
Yep.
fighting.
Yeah.
But here, the comments is mainly made about Robbie himself as the
Hmm.
PI.
Yeah.
like it's a good twist to have. And again, these 3 episodes, that's the biggest thing that stood out to me, is like
Yeah.
the natural use of the mythology that we've seen so many times, and
Yeah.
yet integrated into this very specific point in history,
Hmm.
and a very specific New York City
Yeah.
version of New York City. It's really well done. It does remind me a lot about the cartoon series, the animated
Yeah.
series we watched last year, The Amazing
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Um, because we had similar reactions to that as well, with how they were using the characters and the
Yeah.
mythology.
For sure. For sure. One quick thing. So it wasn't Electro. It was Megawatt. It was the character here, and this Spider Noir. Speaking of characters, but I completely agree with you. I had the same reaction with the mouth comment too, and also even just whenever Ben was like fighting in the spider costume, fighting Megawatt there in the street, talking smack, and even way back in episode 2 when he first dons the costume. um yeah, that we did have some of those callbacks to other iterations of Spider-Man. But yeah, I definitely I did like how they again take elements that we're familiar with, like you said, and then put it into this construct of this universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
and then yeah, and I know just real quick, I know we're coming up on time, but I know we did put a pin in there about the mayor of it all, and I know the mayor was trying to be like latch on the spider to help him with his reelection methods, but there was the interaction between the mayor Silvermane and the police chief, and um of course, the the mayor, so the mayor is trying to like you know, take over, basically like give Silvermane the Heisman, as far as just like, look, I'm the guy in charge here, but Silvermane's like, no, uh, remember who got you here. So yeah, so there's that whole interaction between the triangulation there that was happening there at the club between the mayor, the police chief, and Silvermane. It was another thing that was a highlight for me for this fourth episode.
yeah. I think I've said everything I've wanted to say about these 3 episodes, and we will be covering the second half of the season next week. Is there anything else you want to say about these 3 episodes?
No, I know you talked about the card game. I mean, we touched on it. I mean, I think the one thing that I did appreciate about that scene with Robbie, Janet, and
Lonnie?
Lonnie Tombstone, was because even going back to when Robbie and Lonnie first met, and Robbie was like, "Hey, brother," it was just trying to trying to do the kinship kind of thing, and Lonnie just not having it, and then of course what was really interesting too was just the positioning in that scene, because Robbie was like sitting over Lonnie, like in a position of like dominance, and it just caused Lonnie to like just shut down. But it was Janet, and just very disarmingly just say, hey, let's just play a game of cards, which really like got him to relax and be able to he just started talking, and they got a lot of information, just from just reshifting the elements there in the room. I thought was another really cool thing that they did. I just like the way that scene was shot, and just sort of how it all played out, and just again showing, we talked about it earlier, just showing the how class and other things, even within the various communities within New York, just sort of play out here in the 1930s. So I thought that was a really cool thing as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on all the socials at Will M. Polk, WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me there too at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Scene and Nerd, on Blue Sky. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Threads at Scene_N_Nerd. And visit our website, www.sceneandnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.